What is up, my Pro Design Builder family? I'm Sam, also known as the Pro Design Builder. I'm the best in the business, and it's not even close. In today's video, we're going to be going over how to make six figures in new development projects, right? Specifically, we're going to be going over what are the four pillars of profit on any given project. Let's dive in. So before we get started, just want to just tell you a little bit about me. Like I said, I'm Sam, also known as the Pro Design Builder. For the last almost 9 years, I've been a design build general contractor, right, and building custom homes for clients. So if you don't know what a design build general contractor is, so from when a client comes to see me, so from concept to completion, also financing as well, I take them through the whole process, and I'm the single point of contact from the start to the finish. So before they even have plans, before they have concept, I kind of really get to kind of know who they are, why they want to live this way, how many people in their families, how do they want to live, all of these questions that are very important to structuring a home in the right way. And then I start sketching things and putting it down on pad, and then from there I start layering it with information. And then from there, once we get past that, then we bring in the architects, and then we bring in the engineers, and then we do the selections with the designer and all of the stuff like that, right? So for the last 9 years, that's all I've done is from concept to completion, right? And so it has equipped me with a certain type of skill set that allows me to take investors through the process from concept to completion. So this particular group is specifically for real estate investors who want to make the switch to new development projects and they don't know where to start. I'm your guide, right? So I first got started years and years ago, almost by accident. My wife had gotten into med school and she decided, she wrote me a note, right, which I wasn't happy about. She said that she didn't see us having um, the family type, the family design that we kind of envisioned, right? Initially, I was really kind of bummed out about it because I had this super couple type of um, type of mindset or vision in my head of what we would look like as a family. Come to find out that was the best thing for us. If you know anything about me, I'm big in the foster care space. I've adopted two kids. I've fostered a number of kids in my home. It's something that's near and dear to my heart. And if she had gone to the islands to go to med school, it probably wouldn't have looked like that for me. It's a bigger calling than me or her in many ways. But anyways, so when she decided to do that, I told her she needed to do something, and she said, "Let's look into real estate." And that was the first time that I got the itch for real estate. She handed me the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I consumed the book. I loved it. It kind of struck a nerve in me as a person. And I went to a conference that she had already paid for, and from there, that I was off to the races. Right, I needed one more conference to go to really kind of give me the confidence to kind of take messy action, so to speak. And that's one of the key things that I truly feel strong about is taking messy action and doing doing it scared and not know all of the details, right? So for me, I started out as a wholesaler, right? I didn't have all of the answers, but what I did have is I had a friend and resources. And for you, you'll have mentorship on how to do the things that you're looking to do. So for me, I had a friend in Mike that worked at the title company. He was going to make sure that the title work was done correctly. He was going to make sure that the contract was right. And I would reach out to Mike and I would say, "Hey, listen, what do I put on the escrow line? All right, hey, Mike, what do I do? Do I initial each page on the contract? Simple things like that, because I was very green, was very big to me, but then gave me the confidence to do the things that I needed to do to get deals under contract, right? So I first started out as a real estate investor, and then what happened is I wanted to get into flipping. Right, I've never been a guy that have been content where I'm at. If you know more about my story, I come from a third world country, and all of this has truly been a gift when you really know exactly what my story is. But anyways, so um, Mike gave me all of the information. I started doing deals, but I wanted to be a flipper, right? And on my first deal, I hired a contractor. I fired a contractor. I hired a second contractor. I fired a second contractor. I hired a third contractor, and I finally got through the project. Thank goodness the math was mathing, and it was profitable enough. My investors made money. I made money. I learned a big lesson. But really, what I learned was I was never going to be happy with the level of contractors that I was meeting. Right. So what happened is I started managing projects on my own, and I got really good at getting in and out of projects. All right, we were doing dozens of flips per year, and I got in and out of projects very quickly. And then towards the end of when I had kind of stopped flipping, I was like, let me look into just being a contractor full time, right? So I looked into being a contractor full time, and what I realized is once I made that transition, after 2 years, I realized, and I said to my wife, I don't think I'll ever be happy in this business, right? And because of that, I started seeking higher levels of education and mentorship, right? And I remember how I met my my mentor. It was through a Facebook group, right? And my mentor Jeff. And I remember flying out to Phoenix because there was this contractor, specifically design build general contractors summit in Phoenix. And I met him in through the group first, and then I met him out in Phoenix, and then he just dropped a small nugget on me that I didn't know that it was that big, but I knew it was kind of that big, right? So it's funny how things work, right? So the first time I encountered Jeff was through a podcast. I listened to a podcast that I listened to his wisdom, and I said to myself, I was like, hey, this guy, I would love for this guy to be my mentor, right? Needless to know, I met him, and then he dropped this nugget on me. He said, Sam, I don't sell a product. I don't sell a custom home. I don't sell a home renovation. I sell a system that gets you to that custom home. I sell a system that gets you to that custom home renovation. I sell a system that gets you to. So then I remember I wrote this down, right? And on the top of my pad, right, I still have this notepad. And I went home. I went to the hotel that night, and I said to my wife, I was like, maybe I've been thinking about this all wrong, right? And then I contemplated on it, went to sleep, woke up the next day, met him at the conference, and I told him, hey, listen, you dropped one of the biggest nuggets on me that I ever heard. I never really even thought about it like that. It was the system to get you to this thing. And I remember him shaking his head. And at any given conference, I am at the very front, right? So the funny thing is, at these conferences, sometimes the front row tends to be empty. So even if you're kind of late to the show, you can get a front row seat. And I learned this in high school, right? When I made a shift in my education to sit in the very front, right? So it gives me several advantages. When I sit in the front, I get to engage with the speaker. The speaker will leverage their experience. I will leverage the speaker's experience and that connection for making eye contact and also making a relationship with them after as an added resource for my growth personally, right? So I always sit in the very front. It doesn't matter what the conference is. If I can get a front seat, front chair, that's where I want to sit. That's just my mindset, right? So once I learned that, I went through that conference. I decided right after I came up with this bright idea. I said, Jeff, what if I flew out to your business? At that time, he was doing about $12 million. He's a lot bigger than that now. What if I flew out and I just shadowed you for 3 days, right? And we put a date on the calendar. I had a friend that played for the Lions. They used to play for the Lions, and I came up. I stayed with him, and I came up and I just shadowed Jeff for several days, and it just filled my tank with so much missing information in regards to a system, right? Because I never sat in someone's machine like that, right? Because that wasn't my start. My start started out as a house flipper. And then from there, I just decided to keep building, right? I had a friend named Josh that was a developer, and I just remember flying into Manhattan, and I was kind of like, "Hey, listen, I want to know what you do, how you do it, and stuff like that." And he just really just gave me the game. And at the time, he had about 600 million in the pipeline of really tall, high-rise, mixed-use buildings in Manhattan, right? And it was a different level that I've ever seen when it comes to new development that I never even fathomed, if I'm being completely honest with you, right? And I just remember leaving that meeting, and I represented him on a transaction as the broker, and I was kind of like, I need to learn real estate development through construction, right? So, why do I tell you all of this, right? It's because I am a student of the game. I'm a student at life, right? When it comes to making money and building, building buildings, right? So, enough about that. I want to dive into how do I make six figures? How do I make money in new development projects? And let's dive right in. Right. Let's go. First pro tip. Developers don't wait for appreciation. They create value and get paid multiple times. This is probably one of the most important pro tips I've ever dropped on anybody when it comes to structuring deals. Real estate, um, compared to flippers versus developers, flippers get paid once, whereas developers get paid during the deal multiple times, right? This is kind of how I structure deals, and this is how I get paid multiple times, all right? So, where does the six figures actually come from, right? So, let me tell you a little bit of story about my first deal. Two out of the four pillars didn't exist in my mindset at all, right? I didn't even know these things were a thing, right? So one of the first ways that developers get paid, that I get paid, is through what's called a developer's fee, right? So the developer's fee is a fee inside of the construction cost, right? That when I do construction draws, it allows me to get paid several times through every draw on the transaction, right? You got to think about it in this way. Most of these transactions are very long transactions, right? Sometimes it could be anywhere from 12, 18, even sometimes 24 months, depending on the size of the project. So you will need several different um, profit, points in the transactions to keep you afloat. Now, if you're brand new, right, you clearly have either a W-2 job or you have some sort of profit center, whether it's residual income from rentals or something like that. But if you get into this and you treat it like a business, you're going to need several different profits, I would call it points, to keep you afloat, right? And that's one of the things that I think about quite often. It's 1 to 1, 1 to 3, 1 to 3 months, 3 to 6 months. I need to get some sort of profit. 6 to 9 months, I need to get some sort of profit. I need to get these different profit points along the way, and developer's fee is one of the biggest ways to do that. So having that fee intact, and sometimes it varies. It varies anywhere from 50,000 to 150,000 plus. It really depends on the size of the project. And then now that continues to put gas in the engine, which is very important, right? And then there's also built-in equity, right? What does built-in equity actually mean? All right, so creating income through either zoning, design, or density, right? So if I'm combining two lots, or if I'm splitting lots, and I have to go to the city to get the zoning change, right? The name of the game is highest and best use, right? So whatever that highest and best use is of that particular parcel is what's going to create the value. So having that built-in equity is important. So here's the two things that I always knew and I always had is having that construction margin. Because for me, I've had this construction background. I've always had a construction margin because I know how important it is, right? So anywhere from 10 to 20% for me as a contractor, because I've had great mentorship, I know it needs to be higher than that. But I have this construction margin within the process as an additional profit center for myself, right? Because I am typically the owner, builder, manager of the project, I am drawing on this profit center every time I have a milestone in my project. So every time I hit a milestone, I get a draw, I get some developer's fee, I get some margin from the construction costs as well. So I am getting paid multiple times at multiple levels, right? And then there is the back end profit, right? So after everyone's been paid, I get my certificate of occupancy, I get my investors paid, I get my construction loan paid off. Now I get to reap the benefits of all of my work with the back end profits. So those are the four pillars, right? So four pillars are developers fee, built-in equity, construction market margins, and then back end profits. Right. So pro tip: developers design all four of these in their deal up front, right? So this is going to require a mindset shift and understanding that you are structuring your deals to resemble this, right? This is not like flipping houses, right? But if you've taken a house down to the studs, it's important to know that you've done a lot of the process. You just haven't done the structural work, right? But you need to layer it with four different profit centers, and these are the main pillars in structuring your new development projects. All right. Here's the thing, right? The project doesn't need to be a massive project, right? It doesn't need to be a massive project. But here's one of the things as well too. I don't get paid on building affordable housing, right? That's for someone else, right? I build beautiful, nice luxury homes that are going to pay me in a way that's going to maximize my time. Right? One of the things that you don't realize is your time is everything. Right? And for me, I do realize that. I've had several near death experiences, one where I actually died, several where I see my life flash before my eyes. So I know and understand how life is not guaranteed. So having that time to maximize with your family the way that you like, your loved ones, etc., is the maximum value, right? And making sure you have that is going to be absolutely important. So there's several different ways that developers profit from this, right? So whether it's spec homes, small multifamily tear down and rebuilds, and lot split or combining different lots. All right, so these are the ways that you're going to be able to make six figures on any given project, right? So I'm going to give you an example. All right, this is a sample project, right? And how you should be looking at deals moving forward. So let's say your exit, you always want to back into any particular project, right? You never want to be first in the market center. but you also want to use whatever that sale is as the trigger or exit point, right? And then you want to back into the deal, right? And I'm going to break down the formula that I use to make sure that this deal pencils, right? So let's say the house or spec home or multifamily project is about $900,000, right? So what does that tell me? So $900,000 is the exit. I'm factoring in 50% of that is the construction cost, right? And then from there, I'm going to factor in what is my soft cost, what is my profit, and then what is my land cost, right? It's going to tell me what's my maximum allowable offer when it comes to that land, right? And now I'm going to break this down in percentages so you really get a clear picture on how this should be structured moving forward, right? So when it comes to land cost, your land cost should be no more than 15 to 20%. Obviously, if you could get it lower than that, 10%, that would be ideal, right? But if you cannot, no more than 15 to 20%, and I would say I would lean on the 15, right? From there, you want your construction cost to be no more than 50% of the construction cost as a percentage. And then now you're looking at your soft costs. If you don't know what soft costs are, your soft costs are your engineering, your architect, your attorneys, your finance charges. All of these things are your soft costs. No more than 10 to 12%. And then now on the back end, on your profit, it leaves anywhere from 20 to 25% net profit after you've done all of the work. So that's the math. Land, 15 to 20%. Construction costs, no more than 50%. Soft costs, no more than 10 to 12%. And then now that leaves you with net profit anywhere from 20 to 25%. And those are the numbers that I use to make sure that I have the deal structured correctly. So let's talk about pro tip. If it doesn't pencil, it's not a great deal, right? So this is the same formula that finance companies are looking at when they look to give you a construction loan, right? They're looking if the deal pencils. If the deal doesn't pencil, it's not a good deal, even if there is some profit there, right? So you got to make sure that it pencils in a way that makes finance companies comfortable enough to lend to you, right? And that's the name of the game. So you're probably saying to me, Sam, how do I do these type of deals? I'm not a rich guy. I don't have these type of numbers. I don't have these type of savings, IRA, etc. Right? How do I do these type of deals and I'm not rich? Right? So there's several different ways, right? One of the ways that you can do these type of deals is by getting business credit, right? One thing that's important about business credit is you have to have a specific reason attached to getting that business credit. Now, if you are looking forefront, as an investor and also as a savvy investor, then you can access business credit to structure these type of deals. Then obviously, then there's private investors, then there is construction loans, etc. And then you layer it on top. What's good and important to know is I've done a training when it comes to capital stacks on what that looks like to structure certain loans. And if you want to access that, hit capital stack in the comments, and I'll send that over to you so you know what that looks like, right? So this is the way that you can do deals without having or without being rich to have that sort of capital inside of a deal, right? So developers don't bring money; they bring the deal, they bring the structure, and they bring the execution. One of the pro tips that I want to share here is your expertise is the equity, right? You have to spend time on becoming an expert in this particular area, and that's why I'm here. All right, that's what I help you with. Understanding the thought process, understanding business structure, understanding how to structure deals in a way that's going to make your investors happy and make everybody comfortable, right? So when it comes to flippers are transactional, developers are structural. When you learn how to control the property, design value, and structure the capital, and execute on systems, is now you have all of your business systems running at the same pace, and then now you have value. Right now you created exceptional value for you, your investors, and a profit center for yourself to create six figures on any transaction, right? So hopefully you got a lot from that particular training. I threw a lot at you. I typically try to throw as much as I can at you. Here's the thing about me. I'm not a gatekeeper, right? The reality is nothing's going to happen for you unless you take messy action. If you haven't already, hit like, hit subscribe if you've enjoyed this video and you've gained some significant value from this video. Outside of that, thank you for joining me. Have a great day.